Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee here, and Happy New Year. Happy 2022 to everybody. Can't believe it's actually here already. The year has flown by, and we have so much to look forward to in 2022. And that is what I want to talk about today, which is what are you looking forward to this year? I love January because it's a time of year where we see the year unfolding in front of us and we're excited, we're optimistic about what the year will bring. And I'm really curious to know and hear from you all today. What are you expecting to do this year? What are you hoping to accomplish? What are your top goals for 2022? Because today we're going to be talking about what your top priorities need to be as a leader, and especially as a leader of an organization, excuse me, going through a lot of change. Again, I can't think of anybody who is saying, we're not going to change at all. We're going through no changes in 2022. We're going to say exactly the same at the beginning of the year as we are at the end of the year. And that just doesn't ring true for anybody. So, as a leader, leading an organization that is going through, in many cases, huge, great change, disruptive change, what should your top priorities be for this year? And just to give you a little insight into my process for doing this, I started doing this quite a few years ago. Instead of creating predictions, which everyone does at the end of December, I enjoy reading all the predictions that people have. I collect them, put them into my little spreadsheet, keep track of all those trends, but then also say, what does that mean for what we need to do in the coming year? Because it's great to think about what the future would look like, but what do you actually do? What should your priorities be, knowing what the future will bring? And so I consolidated a lot of that research into these three priorities that I'll share with you today. And these priorities exist for every type of leader, regardless of the industry you're in, and regardless of where you are in the organization. You don't need to be at the very top for these priorities to matter. So these three priorities I'm going to talk about, just quickly summarize and then go into each of them in detail. So the three priorities are to push customer obsession deeply into the organization and into your team. The second is to redefine and to really be clear about the type of a relationship you want to have with your employees, the people that you're leading. And the third is to rethink your relationship, your personal relationship with failure and change. So let me go into each of these in detail, and I'll give you a little bit of an explanation about why this priority is important for right now, and then also some things that you can do to make this become actionable. Because I don't like talking about things in vague ideas and theories. Let's get to work and make these things that we can do right now so they have an impact through the rest of the year. So the first one I mentioned was being clear about what your customer, who your customer is, and to create an obsession for that customer and who they are, and to be really the focus of everything that your team does. And this is sort of a mantra that's been followed for so long. But when I dig into an organization and I walk into a team and I ask them, who's your customer? What do you know about them? What are the activities you do to truly understand them and then take action from it? I get all sorts of different answers, even from the same team, let alone different departments across the organization. And that alignment is what I'm really talking about right now. An alignment around who your customer is, and then being really clear about how to focus on them, knowing how you're going to engage with them, act on their pain points and their needs. Because the reason why this is so important now is that things have been changing so rapidly. We've been just hanging by our fingertips, trying to figure out what that change is happening with customers. Now that things are starting to go to a more even keel, as things are starting to solidify into a constant, it's easy to take our eyes off of that and to assume that our customers aren't changing as much, or to just get a little bit complacent about actually listening to them and understanding where they are. So this is one of the things that we need to be on guard for, that we have to be constantly looking for where those changes are. And because they're becoming more subtle, they are these big, huge changes that are happening so much as they were 2 years ago, maybe with the pandemic starting. We need to be especially diligent about seeing new trends that may be coming out. And this is why it's so important for everyone in your organization to be looking for and listening to what your customers are doing and saying that could be different, because that will give you cues and clues to where those future customers are headed. It's one thing to be able to understand your customers of today. It's another thing to detect where they're going to be going. And so, one of the key things I want to emphasize here is that this applies to everyone in your organization, even if they're in tech, in the IT department, in finance and HR, never really ever talking to customers outside, because what they do is they support everybody else in the organization that also needs to focus on the customer. I was speaking to one CIO and he goes, our IT people need to be so on top of who those customers are, because we're serving people here who are going to be serving those customers. So we need to know how those customers are changing and how our employees, our team members need to be fully equipped so they can go and serve those customers. Same thing with finance and HR. How do customers think? How do we support them when they engage with the financial part of the organization? Well, how do we hire people so that they're the most well-suited people to be able to deal with our customers? And that requires that everyone be obsessed with their customers. So a couple things that you can do. First of all, this is a thing for everyone. This is something that everyone and anyone in the organization needs to be doing. So the first thing is to make sure you're pushing the knowledge you have around customer experience, how we listen to customers, what we understand about them, so that everyone, especially the people at the front lines, can understand who our customer is, can clearly articulate who that customer is, and they can identify things that they are doing to be able to see that customer. There's nothing like seeing the light come up in an employee's eyes when they realize, oh, that's who the customer is. I see them. And it's great to be able to see and understand, touch and hear and listen to our customers on a regular basis. The second thing you can do is to make sure that employees can act on the information when they get it. It's one thing to be able to listen, but when you see something that needs to be fixed, so something that needs to be changed, what are you able to do? What do you have the agency to be able to do? Because that then creates that sense of ownership, that I have a stake in the game with these customers. And again, it may not be necessarily you can engage, but what can you do with that insight and information? Who do you tell? What's the process that you use? So that that insight that you gain as a person working for the organization, when you see something with your customer, how do you do something? How do you say something as a result of that? And the third thing is to make sure that as you gather these learnings, that they are spread throughout the entire organization. I see some organizations with these beautiful collaboration platforms, these knowledge sharing platforms that aren't used. They just go, they're just not used because people don't understand how to use them. Well, there's no strategic purpose behind them. There's a big bang in terms of the initial rollout and adoption, but then it falls aside in terms of other things people want to use. Things just default back to the email inbox. So this is an ability to say, okay, if the information is coming up, if the information is there, why isn't it getting populated? Why is it not being shared? Really do an audit to identify where this customer information is sticky and being blocked from getting out to the people who could actually take action with it, and really start unblocking it. So for example, with these collaboration platforms, who has permission to write to the platform? Who can actually post to it? But what information to what channels? Is it closely held in these private places where people can talk with each other? Or is the information much more open and anybody who has an interest in a particular topic around customers can easily go and see it? So just taking a pause here to see a question, a comment from Jay. He has a great point here that Amazon's a great case and point where it's renowned for servicing its customers while mistreating its employees. So that's a second point, Jay. Fantastic point to the second area, which is defining the employee relationship. Because this key area of the employee relationship is so important because guess who creates those great customer experiences? Amazing, happy, satisfied, engaged employees. And to Jay's point, it's one thing to say, hey, we've got great customer experiences. Do we have great employee experiences too as well? And so one of the things that is so timely right now, we all saw the great resignation happening last year. And there's a great focus on what our people are calling the great energizing of the workforce. So how do we get people more engaged? How do we become better leaders and create a better working environment for everyone? And I saw an amazing statistic in doing my research for this, that the estimates for the employee shortfall, especially at the front lines, is estimated to be between 1.5 million and 3 million people this year. And it's growing. And so we are not necessarily getting all the people we need to fill the jobs that we're creating. And so while we need to work on that pipeline, there are things that we can do today. And in particular, employees want this amazing experience, this consumer grade level experience that we're giving to our customers. But when you come into the organization, when you leave your home that is completely wired and your consumer experience is great and seamless as a customer, and then we go to work and it feels like the dark ages. It feels like we've gone back 10 years in terms of what we experience at work. So I think in many ways, that's just one indication that we haven't invested in that experience. But more importantly, it's not just a technology issue. This goes back to what kind of relationship do we want with our employees? Or to flip it, think about what kind of relationship do our employees want with us? Because the value system has been fundamentally changed because of the pandemic. It is no longer about safety, security, and having a salary. There's a stronger need to be connected to the mission and purpose of an organization, a stronger need to be able to bring my full self to work. So I think one of the key things we need to think about is how do we define that relationship? So the first thing we have to do is define that relationship through the eyes of our employees. What kind of relationship do they want? What can we actually deliver? And the key here, the key action point is to deeply, deeply understand where people are, having empathy for where they stand today. And one of the areas I think around this is to really create safety and a psychological safety for people to be able to bring their whole selves to work. Again, one of the interesting things about the pandemic is that we were literally thrown into our homes and people were constantly checking into each other and with each other. And in particular, understanding what's going on in our lives outside of work, because to check things at the door and not bring things into work is one of the hardest things to do, to have this artificial separation, because I'm still the same person. I don't stop being the Charlene I'm at home with my friends and my family and become a completely different Charlene at work. So this is a key area of creating that psychological safety and space, that if I'm having a good day or a bad day in my work, in my life outside of work, I can bring that in, not so much that it impacts my work, but that I don't have to stop it. I don't have to check it at the door. So one of the things to do that is to create that safety and to create that trust. I think Jay has a really good point. Trust is a measure of psychological safety. So how much do we feel safe and trust and can feel comfortable enough to say, yeah, I didn't have a great day, or I had a great day. I have this thing going on in my life and I will be here. I just may be a little distracted, but I will do my best to be focused on the meeting that I'm in right now. To be able to say that so people understand how you're walking into the room is an incredible gift, to feel supported and understood. Because in the end, that's what we want as people and as employees, is to be fully known for ourselves and for what we can bring to work. So one of the key things to be able to do that is to make it safe to discuss things like your mental health, to talk about the joys and the challenges of your home life, and to have greater empathy for this overall health of people and also respect for family time. One simple thing I ask leaders to do is set deadlines for Friday at 4 o'clock rather than Monday at 9 o'clock. Because then that says we're done. We can go home and have the weekend to rejuvenate versus the expectation that you're going to work over the weekend to get something done for Monday morning delivery. And the third thing I would say is going back to the technology part of what I talked about. Again, so much of work is digital today, especially for people who are knowledge workers. And to really create these digital consumer grade experiences, how would you build this mind blowing digital workspace experience for your employees? And to do that, you got to make a connection between the HR department and the IT department. So that's a new connection. I call this the new the dynamic duo. It used to be IT and marketing focusing on customers. Now we need IT and HR focusing on employees and creating this amazing experience and investing in it. This does not require a huge new system. It doesn't require a whole new sets of technologies or processes. In many cases, it could just be using what we're doing today, but applying in a very different way, geared to be much more employee focused and centric. So really think about all those places where that can be. So a couple other comments here. There's a great one here from Foster. Trust gives employees the enabling environment to use tacit knowledge to enhance the experience. I love this point, Foster, about the tacit knowledge that they already have, because people bring so many strengths and experiences to the workplace. And when you have trust, it doesn't assume that you can only contribute in one area. You can bring that whole self, that diversity of experiences and backgrounds to creating an incredible environment and product and service for customers. All right, we're in the home stretch. The third area I would encourage you to prioritize this year is this is much more personal to you as a leader. And that is, how do you deal with change? What's your relationship to change, and especially to the whole idea of failure? How do you think about failure? Is it something that you avoid like the plague? I want to stay away from failure. I do not ever want to fail. You take the NASA credo, failure is not an option. And in so many ways, that is what we have been trained as leaders to do. We do not fail. We always hit our goals. We are A+ students. And that's great and fantastic until you realize that's nearly impossible. And so the reality is that things don't always work out. You sometimes fall short of your goal. Things may completely collapse and not work out. The best laid plans become fall apart in disarray. So how do you deal with this? Because, and we'll talk about this next week, because if you set only goals that you know 100% you can reach, you're not going to stretch very far. And the reason why this is so important today is that in 2022, we're going to be moving through all of this change, all of the pandemic. We're going into the post-pandemic world. I know we're still in the thick of things with Omicron, but the reality is pandemics usually fizzle out after about 2 years, and we're at that point. So this is moving from survival and hanging on for dear life to, okay, now we can take a breath, and where are the opportunities going to be? And if you really want to take advantage of those opportunities, you're going to have to take risk, and you're going to have to deal with not hitting your goals and ambitions. And so how do we think about this? And how do we think about taking risk, stepping out of our comfort zone? How do we get more comfortable with this? By redefining our relationship with failure. And what I mean by that is failure has this incredible stigma associated with it. This sense of personal of pain, and this identity of myself with the particular thing that worked. And the number one thing that we have to be able to separate is ourselves and our identity from the thing that didn't work. Because something didn't work doesn't mean that we're not good. It means actually that we did our best and it just didn't work for a number of different reasons. And so when we can have that a little bit of separation, not necessarily remove the emotion of something not working out. I can still be upset and not happy about things not working, but I'm not going to take it out on myself to say, well, I failed, the project failed, the products failed, the service didn't work out. But it wasn't something that I closely hold and identify with myself. Because when we can have that separation, then we can move through that setback. I talked to one organization that had an extraordinary relationship with failure. They actually removed failure from their vocabulary. And so we never talk about failure because we realized that we could never remove that stigma. Every time we said the word fail or failure, people started feeling bad. So we just didn't talk about it anymore. Instead, what they said is, oh, we didn't hit our goal. Well, that's great because what did we learn from that? So they took every single opportunity to say, well, we didn't hit our goal. Now we have another data point. Now we can learn something from that to be able to close that gap. So one of the things I encourage you to do is to redefine failure as learning. This is the first action. And always be constantly learning and saying, wow, that didn't work out. What did we learn from that? Okay, we didn't hit our goal. What did we learn from that? Now, how are we going to take the next step now? So remove that stigma, remove that all that negative energy around the concept of failure and flip it around so that you're able to look at this with uh, with clear eyes to say, how do we move forward rather than be disempowered by it. The second thing is to actually talk about this, about the possibilities that things won't work out. And this is about defining just what does success look like in a new way. So if you think about what the realm of possibility is of actions that you can take, there's you at the center of your comfort zone, and you can push out in all different directions out to the edge. And get a commitment from your manager, from your own leader to say, what does that edge look like? How far can we go? And before we become unsafe, clearly define for me what that safety zone looks like and get an agreement on this. Even put it in writing to say, if we go out to here, anywhere inside of this safety zone, we can do whatever we want because if we don't hit our goal, if we fall short, whatever, it's okay. We can pick up and keep going. But up to this point, up to that very edge, don't go past that edge. And then go back to your team and clearly define that too as well, so that anything within that zone is not a failure. It's safe. You're creating, again, that psychological safety space, but also a very clear, defined safe space for taking action. And you can say to people, anywhere within this area, go for it. I had this experience because as a leader running my own company, Altimeter, one of the things I realized was I kept saying to people, you're empowered to go do things on your own. And they kept coming back to me asking for permission. And I realized I hadn't defined those edges. And when I did, they stopped asking me. So that's a very clear thing to do as a leader, define the edges of what is possible. And the third thing I would say is in this time of constant change and experimentation and innovation, we have to get good at starting new things, but we also have to get good at stopping things. And what holds us back oftentimes from stopping things is that we often, again, think about it as failing, as something that's not good. So we have to stop it. And again, we need to stop thinking of things that way because, again, you can't do everything. And if you want to take on new things, we also have to stop doing things. So, how we stop doing things, how we sunset products and services that are waning in terms of their use by customers. How do we have a good relationship with that is absolutely key. So we need to shift from optimizing to minimize these variabilities. Our processes are all about continuity and keeping things going. And we have to stop thinking about only that to creating processes that optimize our ability to also stop doing things. So when we take on these processes, we create certainty about how we're going to stop things. And one of the reasons why we are so reluctant to stop things, for example, to stop a product or a division or in an entire business unit, is because we're not set up to do that. And it feels hard and traumatic, and everybody is filled with uncertainty and fear and doubt, and it's a mess. So we don't do that. But if instead it was clear that we have a process for how we stop doing things, how we make these decisions, and it's clearly thought out, it's not done at the spur of the moment in a state of emergency. We know we have to stop doing things, so we have a process for that. And we can then take care of the most difficult part of this whole process, which is people and their jobs. If they're being transitioned into a new place, then we have plenty of time. We can see it coming from miles away, months and years in advance, and we can prepare for that time with training, re-education, finding new jobs within the company or even outside of it. This is the reality of business, is that we constantly have to make these tough decisions, but we are not setting ourselves up to be able to deal with those types of change. So again, this is a key part of our relationship with change, and not just failure, but how do we actually deal with these difficult types of change and prepare ourselves, especially in 2022, when we can see these changes coming on the horizon. We are going to have to make these tough choices, and we need to prepare for those things. All right, I just want to take a quick look at any comments we have here. Here we go. We have a great one from Marissa. We can have the right process, but it'll not be the right time to be able to do those things. We have Oswan saying failure is lessons learned. I think that's a great one too as well. So, and I think the last one again from Jay, that we're just assuming that the workplace environment is completely distinct and separate from the home environment. That is not necessarily the true case. And one thing I want to bring up, that's something that Jay is sparking for me. I was asked recently, well, isn't this a generational thing? That people of a certain generation, typically in my generation, over 50 or so, have a certain way of thinking about things, that you don't mix work and personal, that the two are completely separate. And my answer to that is personal may not be necessarily disclosing all the nitty-gritty details of what's happening in my household. Believe me, no one wants to know about my particular household and what's going on in it. But it means to be able to bring my person, my personal thoughts, my personal background, my experiences, as we talked about before with the tacit knowledge from Foster, the feeling safe to bring all of those aspects, the lessons I've learned as a parent, to be able to share that. So that's the part of personal, I think, that is very, very much needed in the workplace today. That we feel comfortable showing who we are as people, our personal side of who we are, rather than just the sort of stripped down professional side of me. Because we know in the best places we've ever worked, that you think about the best job you ever had, there was this connection. There was this authenticity, a vulnerability. I even say an intimacy amongst you and your other team members that is very difficult to replicate. And that's what we want. We really want that level of connection in our workplaces, similar to how we have it in our in individual lives. And I have a last comment here from Lynn. Uncertainty is a window of opportunity. I love that. For customer experience insights to inform redesign of so many things, processes, roles, structure, collaboration, so many things. So Lynn, thank you for this last thought here. Step up and be bold with voice of customer to infuse customer centricity into the changes that you are trying to make. Lynn, thank you so much for wrapping it up all together, because these three things, the priorities, are all synergistic to each other. The customer obsession, the employee relationship, so that you can create that customer obsession. And then finally, our personal relationship as leaders to change and to failure will enable all of these changes to be happening. So there is a lot there that I put in today. I just wanted to share a couple of things. I would love to hear from you. So again, I just want to encourage you to send me your questions. Send me the insights that you have. I'm reachable on every social media platform that you are on right now listening to this. You can also DM me and email me, Charlene@charlenelee.com. And I would love to hear, and I'll definitely share those back out on air with people too as well. And then next week, the live stream is going to be talking about setting good goals. And this goes beyond just setting SMART goals. You may know that acronym about being specific and measurable and all those other things. This is about setting goals that are going to be audacious in their nature. So tune in next week to hear about how to set really, really good goals that are going to push you to the very edge of what is possible. All right, have a great week, and I'll talk to you in just a few days. All right, take care. Bye bye.